All right, we are live, guys. It is Tuesday. It's 10 o'clock Central, and we're here for another weekly episode of Nomberg Law Live. And I'm going into the Wayback Machine to get a childhood friend and Little League teammate of mine, Ike Sherlock, out of Jacksonville, Florida, with AGX Freight. Good morning, Ike. Thank you for joining us, bud.
Hey, Bernard, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. And I should have put a picture of us from when we were about 7 or 8 years old playing over at Westgate Little League Baseball, but I'll save that for another day. But Ike is the CEO and executive VP at AGX, and we're going to talk about something that is right in his wheelhouse, the supply chain. And Ike, before we jump into that, and we've all heard that term, but I want you to tell a little bit about your company, what you guys do, and then we'll attack the supply chain issue a little bit.
Yeah, we're a freight logistics company. We're based out of Jacksonville, Florida. We have 22 offices around the country, agents, operating agents, asset, non-asset based agents. We help businesses avoid common supply chain problems, lack of capacity, confusing billing. We built a platform that we feel like addresses some common supply chain issues, and it shouldn't be as hard as people make it.
It shouldn't be, but as we all know, the world turned upside down a little over 2 years ago. And it just seems like one of the buzzwords or buzz terms that we've heard, among other things, is that term supply chain. So in its simplest term, if there's such a thing, can you describe what do we mean when we suggest or talk about supply chain? What is that referencing?
Well, the supply chain is a complex network, and as we have learned in the last couple of years, a very fragile network. Supply chain may be raw materials going to manufacturer to be made into a product. Supply chain may be that product being transported through warehouses and on trucks to get into retailers and wholesalers or being delivered to your home.
The visuals that we've all seen where there's been a disruption in this process is the large vessels that are stuck at port, or the large vessels, frankly, that are literally stuck in the water because the water level is too small. When we see those visuals, of course, it makes us mad because we're sitting there and we're waiting on our stuff. Well, the couch or the sofa or whatever we ordered 15 months ago is still not here. We get the emails that say, we're sorry, it's on its way, estimated date of arrival, those kind of things. But just in general, like what's on those trucks? I mean, not trucks, what are on those big vessels that we see, that all those huge containers? I think maybe 60 Minutes may have done a thing or two on it, but what is that? What's in there?
Yeah, 60 Minutes did a very good piece on that a few months ago. So back up to pre-pandemic, West Coast ports would have had 8 to 10 vessels in the bay waiting to come in to be worked. And when I say be worked, I mean the container's unloaded. All of your product that you order, everything that comes from Asia pretty much, unless it's flown over, comes in shipping containers. And interesting, this is the anniversary of the shipping container. 1955, the first shipping container today was loaded on a ship. Until then, we had cargo nets and stuff like that. So wow. That shipping container is a box. It's a metal box that you can pick up by cranes, and you can put onto chassis, which are truck tires, basically, to be transported around. They stack on the vessels, and they make the world go round. And the supply chain disruption is really death of a thousand cuts. There was a shutdown, and then there was a lack of raw materials, and then there was a lack of labor. The thing that is really perpetuating this slowdown, this shutdown, why you're not getting your stuff, is a container imbalance. So containers are finite. There's only a certain amount of containers. When the world stopped, they were all in the wrong place. And we have not been able to get a container balance back in play yet. So those shipping containers being in the wrong place, either importing or exporting, is really perpetuating this. So when you saw the 60 Minutes piece, at that point, there was 100 to 110 vessels waiting to come into port to be worked. Pre-pandemic, that number would have been 10. This morning, I think it was 38, and we're calling that a win. So progress, I don't know. But everything you buy with Amazon, a lot of the things you buy with the major retailers, a lot of the things you've ordered, specialty stuff like sofas, to be manufactured, that's on those vessels.
And I'm sure it could be just about anything the mind can imagine, whether it's parts to cars or actual cars. It could be wheat or what, like you said, anything typically that's from Asia or coming over. But do you see kind of light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak? Are they? You said they're down to 38 at last count. Does that mean that they're heading in the right direction from a freight movement standpoint?
Yes, there's some headwinds that we're concerned about, but right now things have improved and things continue to improve. You're not seeing as many shortages or outages at your grocery stores. Things you ordered a ridiculously long time ago are starting to arrive. But the headwinds are there's a tsunami of freight coming for back to school. So last year, purchasing managers got caught short. They ordered the back to school products from Asia, and those products were sitting on those ships in the Port of Long Beach, off the coast of California, off the West Coast, when back to school started. So they missed one of the busiest retail times of the year. They've compensated by ordering in advance this year to account for the extra transit times. So now we're seeing those containers leaving our country empty. We have the lowest export numbers since 2002 because that container, that metal box, is more valuable than a lot of exports that we have.
I was just getting ready to ask you, are we now catching up? And that's my term, that's not the right term, but are we now getting things back to slowly getting them back, because now we're able to send the empty containers back to go pick up what had been ordered however long ago? Well, who makes these containers, and how do we get in on that business? Or is it just a finite number of containers that are out there, period?
It's sort of like housing in Florida. You can't make it fast enough. You can't build them fast enough. The steamship lines primarily own the containers, captive fleet. And, there's millions of containers around the country. Europe has been, European exports have been much faster to recover than Asian cargo because there's so much more Asian cargo. And because the East Coast ports have dealt with the congestion problems and dealt with the increased volumes and dealt with the spikes much better than the West Coast ports.
Well, I was going to ask you East versus West, but you just kind of alluded to that a bit. What gives you, in your position with your company as big as it is, what gives you headaches about this, and how are you guys dealing with it? I realize that is a huge question. You can bite off as much as you want there.
The inland side of it is where we are. We are not an MVOCC. We're not negotiating rates. We're not working with steamship lines directly. Our clients, the product's already landed, and we're picking it up from the port, or picking it up from a field for produce, or picking it up from manufacturers. So my concerns are mostly in country. And the concern there, the biggest concern there is like we've been talking about since I came in the industry 20 years ago, driver capacity. We don't have enough truck drivers. If we have enough truck drivers, we don't have enough parking spaces. There's not enough capacity in the country for trucking, because everything I'm seeing in your office right now behind you, everything in your office came on a truck.
Yeah.
Everything in everybody's office came on a truck.
You know, Ike, we have an Amazon distribution center about 2 miles from the office, and I ride by it all the time. And I'm equally amazed on the days when I see so few trucks in their docking bays, and then the days when I see it completely full, and then other trailers waiting to pull up there. It's equally as the other way impressive. So I'm just curious, and this is not an Amazon question, I'm really asking more overall, is when you're moving product around within the country, and maybe this is where the logistics of what you do comes in, how do they not overload a destination on day one and then be completely empty on day 4? Is that the logistics that you work out that you all do?
One of the things that we do, that's one of the services we provide. But let me touch on Amazon. I think it's so fascinating that supply chain, shipping, everything in a short amount of time. I mean, think about 7 or 8 years ago. If you ordered something online, it's probably unusual. You didn't order a lot of stuff online.
Yeah.
You expected to pay shipping and handling, and came in a week, 2 weeks, 5 days, 5 business days.
Yeah.
I ordered something this morning. It will be on my porch this afternoon, and I won't pay any shipping and handling for that.
Yeah.
I mean, how far this industry has come in a short amount of time is astounding. And it's all technology based. So when you're talking about overloading facilities or not overloading facilities, it's just in the metrics that we follow and in the technology we're utilizing.
And it seems like it's moving even during the pandemic, or maybe because of the pandemic, it seems to be moving at light speed in certain areas of probably what you do on a day-to-day basis. And then on other areas, you probably feel like you're in quicksand. And I realize that's just in generalities, but you're right. When you have, for example, an Amazon-like company, and you have the same day delivery service, well, I forget what they call that, but that's incredible. It really is, compared to just 6, 8, 10 years ago, when you're right. It would, well, I hope to get it by the end of the month. Now I get it by the end of the day. It's incredible. Guys, I'm talking with Ike Sherlock. He's with AGX Freight, based out of Jacksonville, Florida. He's also, at the time, not only Ward 4 Westgate Bunter of the Year, but maybe in the entire city, what he was known for as a 7, 8, 9-year-old. Absolutely. I was there to witness it. Ike,
I was a solid 8th round draft pick on teams of 11. So that's my claim to fame.
But don't underestimate that. You can get some real bargains and some real finds in that later in the draft. But of course, we're not talking really about Little League Baseball here. We're talking about the supply chain. We're talking about what keeps Ike up at night, or maybe lets him go to bed a little at ease, depending on what's going on. Ike, I want you to get out your crystal ball. You've seen what's going on in the industry in the last couple of years. Where are we going from a supply chain standpoint? I know we've talked about it a little bit. Things are starting to get a little bit more improved. If I've got my sofa out there and I've been waiting on it for 14 months, am I still going to be waiting on it for quite a while longer, or do you see things kind of speeding up a little bit?
I think a man named Sean O'Brien is going to make that determination about your sofa. Sean O'Brien is the new president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Longshoremen. O'Brien took over this year as president, and he's a very aggressive guy. He's a Boston guy. He wants to make a big first impression. And in a very constricted labor market, logic would tell you now's the time to really, really get all you can for your Brotherhood of Teamsters. He is about to embark on his first negotiation, and that will be with UPS. The Teamster UPS relationship's always been a little salty. under the best of times, and now it's it's a tough time right now in the supply chain. So UPS handles transports or touches 6% of this country's GDP.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty astounding number. 4% of the international world GDP, UPS. So what can Brown do for you? Quite a lot. So even a short shutdown would be impactful. And then the Teamsters on the West Coast, the Teamsters are in every port. We work with Teamsters in every port. It's the way the ports work. It's good labor. But even a brief shutdown or a brief walkout or work stoppage could conceivably change that 38 vessels to 100 again. So that's one of the things that's keeping me up at night. The trucking market, the domestic trucking market, we feel like we've been thinking about for a few months is going to change pretty dramatically. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, they issue the motor carrier numbers. If you start a trucking company, you have to have a motor carrier number. Right. In the last 18 months, they've issued record numbers of motor carrier numbers because everybody was chasing the gold rush. Trucking rates, the trucking market, being in trucking for the last 2 years has been fantastic. The rates have been all-time high. A lot of people entered that market. Equity people entered the market. A lot of hired drivers bought trucks and entered the market. They all share common themes. They all overpaid for insurance. They all overpaid for labor. They all overpaid for their equipment. A lot of these business models are built on non-sustainable rate per mile. And since the beginning of the year, we've seen a gradual decrease in rates per mile as the world returns to normalcy. And we feel like a lot of those and at the same time we're having a decrease in rate per mile, we're seeing an increase in fuel, which is a really bad conflux.
That is a
bad. A lot of those carriers, a lot of those carriers that don't have deep pockets anyway are going to get caught in that mix and get washed out. So adding to the capacity constraints. So that's good.
We had a question submitted was from a labor market standpoint. You addressed it just a second ago about the driver's side of things. Are you seeing a need in any other particular sector of this system where there is going to be a real more of a need from a labor standpoint?
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned you have a Amazon distribution center 2 miles from you.
Yeah.
Most of us do. Most of us have Amazon distribution centers within 2 or 20 miles of us. And there's a lot of people that work in those facilities. So, we have thought for a while that as retailers close, as big box retailers go out or go under or reduce size, that those folks could transition into logistics warehouse jobs. Tons of need, tons of opportunity.
Well, I know we've mentioned Amazon, but they're the big boy right now and seem to be in the news, good or bad. But from my standpoint, from our firm's practice standpoint, the number of injury claims that have folks called us in the last 2 years with Amazon has skyrocketed. There's 3 facilities within 100 miles of here, and I don't know how well those folks are being trained. I don't know if they're used to working around machinery, whether it's man-occupied forklifts or the other types of machinery that work on their own. Anyway, just as a side note, those types of injury claims have just exploded. And I know that it's not unique to just mid-state Alabama. That's for sure.
No, Bernard, when I entered the industry, fortunately, I was taught very quickly, you're in an industrial setting, warehousing, being around trucks, truck offices, people can get hurt or badly injured or worse very quickly. Yep. And you have to constantly pay attention and constantly be training and have proactive safety training. So as you see this big influx of labor coming in, not just Amazon, but a lot of these large warehouse facilities have a lot of turnover. So if you have a lot of turnover, you don't have a lot of seniority, you don't have people that are experienced, people that have been doing this a long time, and in industrial settings, that could spell real significant danger quickly.
Yeah, particularly, just another quick example, when you have somebody who's only been there 90 days, this is a different company setting, not Amazon, and then they're moved from just a hourly worker to a supervisor, and they have no training with the machinery, there's a real problem. But 100% of the time, forklift versus human, forklift wins. And sometimes it's pretty ugly, but I'm getting us off the mark, and we've got just a couple more minutes, Ike. We talked about sofas, we've talked about produce and food, and I realize everything that's behind me and that I'm sitting on and using, all of that came from somewhere. So my question, and maybe, I don't know if this is necessarily on topic, can you address products that are made in the country, in the United States, in our country, versus products that are shipped in from overseas? Is there a difference in lag time, my word, of delivery if I order something within the States versus I order something from Japan? Are you seeing, is there, and I don't know if that's a great question, but it just went from a supply chain standpoint, I know there's got to be issues with both.
But that is a great question. A little bit. That is a great question, because I think one of the biggest opportunities we have, all of this chaos, in all chaos, there's great opportunities. And I think one of the biggest opportunities we have is to bring a lot of manufacturing back to the U.S. We've offshored, we've nearshored. We've had a just-in-time mentality where you just, the concept of manufacturing, where you just have the product there at the time you're going to manufacture it, so it goes right through. Just in time doesn't work if your raw materials are sitting on a vessel off the West Coast. Yeah. It just doesn't work. So I think there's a great opportunity. I think that certain state governments, certain local governments are being very aggressive. I know in Florida, we've been very aggressive, courting new business, courting new manufacturers, and sending them, getting them to come to Florida to build a manufacturer. I think of all of this, I think it's one of the biggest opportunities we have, and a lot of states are capitalizing on that. American made means that you may pay a little more landed cost, but I can find a truck to put it on a truck to take it to you. I'm at the mercy of the steamship line and containers and a bunch of other elements with that long supply chain that comes from Europe or Asia.
That is, with all of this in mind, when I was buying some home furniture in the last 3 or 4 months, I just went to the stores and I wanted what was on the showroom floors. I did not want to follow the stories that many of my people in my world are still waiting on their things. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know that has probably been a trend that you got to get it while you see it. And I'm wondering if that too, Ike, has impacted this make it at home, make it in the States, I mean, versus shipping it from overseas. And hopefully other states have recognized this over the last many months, and it becomes, and I guess it would also create more jobs domestically.
Absolutely. We're talking about jobs earlier. I mean, there's I think the great resignation is starting to unwind, and as people are starting to, realize that, being at home without anything to do is not the best thing. They're coming back to work. So, yeah, there's huge opportunity to make it in the U.S.
Yeah, I've noticed my viewership has gone down on Tuesdays because more people are working. No, I'm a kid, but Ike, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today and talking through what has been frustrating for many, but they don't live it like you do. But I know that you've got your hand right where it needs to be to get stuff done. So thank you for sharing your expertise and your experience with us today.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And guys, as I say every week, it's interesting conversations with people in their areas of expertise. And Ike Sherlock out of Jacksonville, Florida certainly has fit that bill today. Thank you again, Ike. You guys out there, whether you're catching us live or on replay or YouTube, continue to be safe out there. Your sofa will show up. Don't know when. I can't make promises, but it'll eventually get there. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Take care.